Hello everyone, it's time to start the build of HMS Elizabethan for as part of my Classic Kits group build. So this is a 1995 release of a early 1970s produced model. We're building it straight out of the box. I have the intention of putting on the VAT form sails. I've already opened the box. This was still in its cellophane and had never been opened since it came out of the factory. And when I opened it to have a look at what was in there, when I first decided this was going to be the build, we discovered there was no threads. And there's 3 different threads required. So I've gone and found some threads that I've got in my stock to replace those. Other than that, everything else will be coming straight out of this. We may do some alterations to the model as we go, and if we do, we'll be doing it in plastic or wire. But I'm looking at these spotting tops and thinking, oh my, they need some work to be improved because they look like bathtubs. So yeah, we might do things slightly differently, but loosely going to follow the paint instructions and do it as intended by the manufacturer. Now this is a generic kit. It came out under several different names with slightly different paint arrangements, but the same basic kit behind it. So Hella really wrung the most out of the tooling that they could at the time. So I don't know whether new Hella has re-released this or not, or whether they intend to. I've no idea. But yeah, it also comes with all the flags, which are paper flags, so it'll be interesting to see how we get on with those. So yeah, all quite exciting. It's been a little while since I've done a plastic tall ship, so be interesting to see how we get on. So in the box we've got our kit, we've got our flags, we've got our instructions which have started to yellow a little bit. I've gone and dug out some threads to use. I've decided to go with brown for the standard rigging. Brown is a little bit more authentic, especially for that time, because tar goes brown when it's weathered. And then we'll use natural for the running rigging. This actually is what I'm going to use for the anchor, and then we've got this, which I think came out of a Hella or maybe a Revell kit anyway, and so is thread from that period, from the 70s, that I've had in stock since probably the 80s. You can see I've cut up, this was a single sheet, but actually you can see how that's curving up. That's because the sheet was wider than the box. So I've cut it up to stop them getting any further damage. This is going to be our build tray for the rest of the build. So these are my parts. They're still sealed in the bag. So we're going to open them and have a look together at what we're going to be dealing with. So we'll get all of this out of the way. So this really takes me back. We've got raised wood and all that sort of stuff. So just going to open up the bag. We can discard the bag, won't be using that again. So we've got the 2 hull sides loose. So if I just move that out of shot for a sec, then the camera can focus. So we've got a totally smooth bottom, which denotes our waterline. So not massively happy with that, but that's what we've got to work with. And then we've got this sort of wood effect. So raised wood texturing, and it's probably over scale and what have you, but it'll look alright under a wash. No reason why that shouldn't be okay. So we've got two halves. We're not going to be able to test fit them, but gives you an idea of the size of the model when it's done. Interesting, we've got that missing there. I'm guessing there's gun ports or something that go in there. So that's our two hull sides. We've got on this sprue we've got the deck, we've got the base, and this upright stands for the base. Base says Hella on it, so I guess I'm probably gonna sand all that off, and we've got some seam to clean up, and then we've got cannon trucks, I'm guessing. They're pretty basic. Bit more deck, not quite sure what those parts are. Oh, bottom of the anchors, so anchor bottoms, anchor tops, couple of yards, and not quite sure what those are just yet, and some bit rails. Okay, that's all good. Then we've got two orange brown sprues. Don't you love the 70s? I mean, this was a real trendy colour in the 70s. I mean, blimey. So we've got rudder with really bad ejector pin marks on it. We've got the sections that are going to go in. Oh, okay. So thread will go through there to form part of the chain plates, and then we've got forecastle deck there. Yeah, these are internal bulkheads. Again, ejector pins, not on the surface you don't see, but on the surface you do see. How lovely is that? Yeah, some ladders, nice and chunky. And then we've got some, oh lovely, every single one of the details here, all the decorative details got an ejector pin in every one. I mean, blimey, come on. Fortunately no ejector pins in our little turrets, so they're all cool. That's good. That's helpful. Yeah, okay, and then our last sprue, another one of these funky 70s oranges, and we've got, this is the forward bulkhead here, lots of decoration and parts on it for us to paint up, so that all looks good. We've got dead eyes there, and then we've got the stern, which has thankfully no ejector pins in, but lots of lovely decoration. And then we've got our masts, which look crisp enough, just a bit of seam to get rid of. Bound to be some ejector pins in it though. Yeah, on this side we've got ejector pins to sort, so a little bit time consuming. And then we've got these spotting tops, which are pretty hideous really. We'll have to think about what we do with those, if we use them at all, or whether we modify them. As a kid I'd have used them and modified them. And then we've got this nice nameplate which just says Elizabethan on it, so that's very usable. Yeah. Okay. That is all our parts. Let's have a quick look at our instructions. So I'm sort of expecting step 1, build the model. Step 2, paint the model. It's sort of what I'm expecting. We will see. We've got a little key there. And then we've got some general modelling advice, and then quite handy, this I might cut out and keep or transfer to a spreadsheet. We've got a Hella paint number cross-referenced with a Humbrol paint number and colour name. So these are obviously the old numbers, but you can on on the internet find conversions from old Humbrol to new Humbrol numbers. So that means that if you've got an old Hella kit with paint call outs, you could cross-reference them with Humbrol, and then once you know what the new Humbrol is, you can then cross-reference that with Tamiya, Vallejo, or whoever you like. So that's quite handy. Also, it's in multiple languages, and it's a stapled sheet. If you turn over, we do have multiple steps. That's exciting. So building the anchors. That's a look at this. That's a complete sub-assembly, so we won't do that first. Those things that I didn't know what they were, they're the cannon, the actual guns. Okay, so building up all the guns, that's a sub-assembly we don't need, so we don't do that straight off. We don't need to do that straight off. We don't need to do that straight off. We don't appear to need that straight off. So actually step 8 is going to be my step 1, I think, by the looks at it. And we're going to plop all of this together, clean it up, paint it up. Then we'll do step 9. Then I think we've got some of the sub-assemblies being used in... Yeah, got sub-assemblies being used, so we'll have to do some of the sub-assemblies there. Then we're putting on, building up the back end there. Looks like we've got some swivel cannons on there. And that's pretty much it. That gives us masts, explains the rigging tool. Then we start the rigging, which will be the more complex bit, adding the flags and our paint instructions. Don't you just love paint instructions from the 70s and 80s? Yeah, so wavy line, 98, white, yeah, black. I know some of the colours, not all of them. Okay, there you go. That's what we're going to do. Let's get stuck in. Well, I've got the first parts out, and it's bringing back lots of nice memories of models that just roughly go together. A lot of work needed to get this to even remotely fit. Yeah, so you got a sort of, I mean, there's no positive fit of anything, so we're going to have to use old-fashioned tube glue. I'm going to give you an example. We've got male and female, so we've got pins, but the pins actually don't really reach the holes. So you've got to clamp it together, and you know, you can't really use them for alignment. The front one reaches, the back one reaches, the middle one you've got to push it together. Then we've got this transom piece which doesn't fit in at all, but the length of the holes is different, so we've got to level that, and then we're going to have to put that in separately. You're going to have to pinch this together, so we're going to need elastic bands. Lots of old school building techniques, but what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at filling this lot first, and getting rid of all these ejector pins. And then we'll build it all up, and then we can do some cleanup ready for fitting next parts. So I'm going to get all the parts out from my sort of step 8 and have a look at the fit of all of those before we do anything else. Pretty much every surface needs sorting. You need to square everything off because you've got lips and, you know, uneven surfaces from the old days of tooling. Same really with this surface here. You can see all sorts of witnesses of various things on here, so It's just going to help things go together. That will go up a grit there. And you can see when you go over it where you're making contact and where you're not, and how out of flat it is. Okay, so we've got two options with the ejector pins. We could cover the whole lot with some plastic card, or we could fill it. I'm going to fill it and then see if I can put some scratchy lines in and blend it in, I think is my plan. So yeah, I think that will be quite doable. We've got some flashy bits there. I want to just remove those first before we do the filling. Okay, and then I'm just looking in these holes here, the gun port openings, and making sure that there's no flash or anything like that in there. They're nice and square. Yeah, that looks all good. Okay, that's my first, I nearly said fuselage, hull half done there. So with the deck, we've got just sand around that edge to get rid of your sprue gates. This feels a bit lumpy as well, so just gonna make sure there's no seam or anything. It's gonna get in the way of what will be generally quite a poor fit anyway. And then we've got some drilling to do. So we've got a couple of holes to drill here and a couple of holes to drill here. So let's do that next. So the instructions call for a 1.6 drill, which is what we're using, which is pretty much the complete width of the hole that the manufacturer's put in there. So there we go. Oh, that just broke through. And then I like to go back in from the other way and just make sure everything's nice and clear. And we can deal with any of that fluffy leftover. Okay, and then we've got a couple of holes to drill at the front, and it's telling me I need to change to a 1.2 for that. So let's do that, and we're drilling part C. Okay. Okay, that's our holes in. On the other hull half, we've got a much steeper, we've got like a little step. So I've gone to a 100 grit to deal with that. Just quickly take that down. And then I'm going to test fit. Yeah, that's better. That is absolutely better. Now look at this. Look at the seam on that there. It's whopping. So we need to level that. Now what you can see, if I just clamp that together so I can be a bit more hands-free, what you can see at the bow is that we've got a little step. It's not level, so the model is way off. So before we do any gluing, I want to be doing some test fitting. So we've got a part that sort of slides in here like so. easier said than done. Well, you get the idea. It's going to go there. Oh, unless it goes on the top, does it? Maybe it goes on the top surface and someone else... Yeah, I think someone else attaches to it. So you can see that's not going to be straight because of this crookedness. And you've got it, it's higher at one end than the other. So, and then we've got a deck piece that has to go in, which is the sub-assembly 3 that I said I wasn't going to make, that I'm going to have to make. So my gut feel is that we'll level this off. And then see if we can adjust that and not have a gap. So yeah, all interesting, as are the ejector pins on the front faces. Gonna have to fill those because they're quite deep, and then we'll sort that out. So yeah, and then at the back here we have a similar problem. So let me get another clamp. So at the back here, that's not level either. You see there's a little step in it, and that's going to give us a problem fitting the transom and gallery piece in, which needs to fit flush. And then you have the decoration sits on top. So we need to make sure that's nice and flat, but needs to sit inside. And we need to follow the wooden panels, the planks, the strakes of the planks need to follow around there. So we need to put that in with a razor saw. So just doing the sub-assembly, you then look at it more closely and you see, right, okay, this is what I've got to do. So I think my next step is sorting out that front end. So we do need this little bit of deck, so let's get that out. I think that looks better. It's not going to be perfect, but you know what, it's going to do the job. So okay, happy with that. Let's clean up the back end. So we need to make sure that's nice and flush. Which it now is. And get rid of any lumpy bumpiness on this back edge. Less important in this area. So not much in the way of cleanup on the back. It's just making sure that everything fits and looks as good as we can make it. Okay, so that's the back end sorted for now. We might have some more remedial work to do once the two hull halves are together. But in theory, we could put the hull halves together now with the decking, because all of that's cleaned up, and see where that takes us. So let's do that. You forget with more recent kits how much manipulation we had to do of kits when we were younger, because the fit was just so poor. There was nothing really positive about it. I mean, look at this deck. This deck goes in here, and I have a good millimetre of wriggle room at both ends, and it doesn't go the full length, so there's nothing locking the position in that direction. And what we've got to do is get these three parts together using just that gap and that gap to line everything up. So, you know, you are bringing it together, pushing things into place, bringing it together a bit more, moving something, finding things haven't stuck together, all of that. So because of that, we're using this tube glue. Yes, I don't chuck my tube glue away because this is genuinely the best glue for this job. And it's not because I'm, trying to build it like I did as a kid. This glue has a slower drying time and a thicker viscosity. So it's going to do two things. It's going to give me time to do all the manipulation I'm going to have to do to get things lined up. And it's also going to do a bit of gap filling. Both of the things are really, really positive and needed for a kit like this. So, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to plop one half of the deck in and then immediately put the top half on. So it's gonna be fun. So the way to do that is to apply some glue. If we were doing this like with a modern day, and I've got modern day model building brain these days, it would be to put a seam of glue, CA glue, and on there, and then put the thing in. But as a kid, I'd put the glue on both those parts, pick it up, and hope I didn't have too many gluey fingerprints. So I'm trying to sort of think modern brain with experience and old school, how did we do this? So it is a bit more testing actually building this older kit than a newer kit. We know that we've got the fit right with this, so we know that's not too much of a problem. So the other thing we could possibly do is have the decking loose and then secure that in with liquid poly. I think that might make sense. I just want to see how possible it is to flick the deck in. Yeah, we might be able to just pop the deck in. Right, decision made. So let's get our liquid glue out. I don't know how long I've had this tube or even if I can open it. Right, well, I'm not going to be defeated. Time for a special tool. So just in case this squirts out everywhere, which sometimes used to happen, I'm going to just do it over this. There we go. We've got movement. And we'll hold it that way, which will help. There we go. I've got a feeling I've used this one before, but I don't know. Take that bit of chunky old glue off. Okay. Oh, I can already smell it. Ah, the smell of the 70s. Love it. Right, let's get some of this glue on. There we go, look at that. Spreading it with the nozzle, just like the good old days. So I've got the two halves together. Glue is slowly starting to dry. I've just done a very quick test fit and we can fit the deck in afterwards. So we've got this to put in first, which is ultimately going to be the stop, the seat for our mast. So I just need to level it off because it's not flat. Want it to make a good contact. And that goes in, it doesn't, oh, just forward of A, so it's going into that one. Like so. So let's get that in. Okay, that should be strong enough, so let's plop this in now. There we go, push it forward, and what we'll do is we'll do it in 3 sections. We'll do this bit, and that bit. And the reason being, we need to hold this lot together while it's drying. So we're going to use some elastic bands or rubber bands to hold this lot all together. So take the clamps off the front, put our first elastic band loop round, and get our clamps back on. Okay, and then we can do this second stretch. And when pinched together, fit's going to look okay. We're not going to have any gaps or anything, so quite happy with that. Just take those off for a sec and put an elastic band sort of there. Get one of the clips back on that, and another elastic band at this point here. Because we're using a slow dryer glue, I just want to have those clips on. They're probably not required anymore, but you know, just to be sure. And then pinching this together, we can run our liquid poly in to the rest of it. There we go. Last elastic band. And we did that one 3 times just to be sure. One thing the elastic bands can do is actually make the keel split open because of the force, so we'll just make sure that's not going to happen. Just lost a clip somewhere. I heard it shoot off. The one on the bow, but bow seems to be holding. Tube glue, although it's slower drying, it's not slow drying, so we're almost there, and we can see now how that's going to go in, and we'll be able to put our mast in. There is a little part here which again is going to be the mast seat, which we can install. So that's what we drilled those 2 holes for. There is a deck going to go above that, so this isn't going to be seen. So that is a pretty horrid fit, so I'm going to use the tube glue again for that. So there's nothing flat about the underneath of that part, so there we go. Nice. I enjoy using the tube glue. I don't know why. I'm sure it's all to do with taking me back to my youth. But there we go. That is hull. We'll leave that now for a few minutes to harden up, and I can now look at tidying up of the back, so we can get that part in, which I think is going to be harder than you think. Don't know. We need to do the razor saw bit first. But as you can see, the fit is not great. It's going to need a bit more pinching in at the end. And possibly a bit of gap filling and a bit of sanding and tweaking. Okay, I'll come back to you when we're ready for the next bit. So I've built the display base up, and it's really interesting. We do have these ejector pin marks to sort out, and they put the Hella logo on, which I'd shown before, but actually the stand goes into it, so the Hella logo doesn't really work particularly. So although I'd sort of wanted to keep it on out of sort of novelty interest, we're gonna have to remove it because it looks ridiculous like that. We've got some moulding of the time issues to clean up, so we're gonna get stuck into this first. I'm using a flat file so we can work quickly. Take the flash off. And you get on older kits, you know, kits of the 70s, you get a lot of unevenness. So the first thing we're doing is just getting things even, and we can see that we've got 3 recessed ejector pins there, which we'll fill and then sand it flush, not with this, but with something of a finer grit. So we've got, on the curve here, we've got a sprue gate connector that we need to remove. The plastic's really quite hard. So it doesn't mind the file quite so much. I used to use files a lot more in plastic modelling back in the day than I do these days. That's, you know, we've had new inventions like sanding sticks and stuff, but also you don't need to be doing the sort of fundamental work that you used to have to do. Right, we're now ready to clean up this hull, and we've got quite an interesting hull. It's totally smooth where it below the waterline, and above the waterline we've got this wood texture, which is actually, I mean, it's overscale, but it looks all right. And then where we've put the 2 halves together, we've got this keel that needs sorting out. We've got some glue that leached out into the clamps, and everything's not quite as lined up as, and you know, typical for the time. Not unusual today, to be honest. So again, we're going in with the file, and we're just leveling that up. Take that plastic glue down. So that is it roughly cleaned up. Now, even though this won't be seen, it needs to be done properly. It's not about what will be seen and what won't be seen. You know, why do people put a lot of effort into cockpits of aircraft models and then you don't see it? It's about mindset, and the mindset is about doing a good job and turning this into a miniature. So we don't cut corners. We do it properly. We take the time. That way you've got a model that will look its best, and you can be proud that you did your best, and that's how you progress. Right, so we've done a rough sand there with the file. So we're going to go in now with 220 and just make sure it's all nice and level along the length. That feels right, and we can go in and take any burrs off, make sure that's nice and flat and straight. Okay, and then we're just going to drop down the grits a little bit. So this is a 400. Shouldn't need much. It's just a dusting over now. Then we're going to go 600. And you can feel how you get less resistance every time as this gets sort of polished up and starts to look its best. And then finally I'm going to go in with an 800. And there you go. And you look at that keel now. That's perfect. So that's what we need. Now, what we're going to do with here, you can see we've got a couple of sort of mould lines there and there. You can also see in the light we've got a bit of sink. So I'm just going to go over this with a sponge. This is a 600 sponge, and we're just going to take it down. Now this is doing two things. Not only is it just tidying everything up, but it's also giving us, because we've got quite a shiny plastic surface here, it's also giving us something for the paint to key onto. Now we can see there's a little moulding imperfection there. I hadn't spotted that until I sanded it, so that's why these little processors are handy. Now we're going to be painting the lower hull matte black, and that will hide some of the imperfections because it's matte, it won't bounce the light so much. But we don't want anything glaring because you may still see it. So I'm just going to work that out a little bit. There you go. And then we can drop down. This is a 1500. There we go. And we don't want to polish it up any more than that because, like I say, we're keying the surface. The prow here, again, we've got quite a lip there and it needs levelling, so we just carefully go in with the file. Same process as with the rest of the keel. Could have done it at the same time if you wanted because you're using the same tools. It's just easier to show you how we get that flat really. Okay, then the 400, try not to lose the little corner here, we don't want to round that off. There we go, that looks good. And then we'll just go in with an 800 and finish that off. Okay, happy with that. So at the back here, we need to level these sides a little bit, and I want to do that before we put the transom piece in and get rid of the seam, because the seam, the little lip that it causes, like I say, very common on older kits, will stop things fitting flush. So we need to get rid of the seam because it interferes with the fit. often these edges are quite sort of soft and bumpy and uneven. Okay, also before we put the transom in, I want to follow the planking line around the end here, so let's do that next. So I've got my little razor saw here, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the end. Now what they've done is they've made the wood grain raised, but as a result the plank lines, the joints where the two planks butt up, are recessed, so we can follow that recessed line around, and that should give us a nice little effect of it being an actual plank, is what we're looking for. I've not got my magnifying glasses on, which doesn't help. Let me get my magnifying glasses. There we go. So we don't want it too deep, we just want it to be visible in the paint. So there you can see it there. So we'll just put the blade into that line, nick the corner, and that gives us our line. You can see there we've got one plank depicted there. So it will improve the look. It's a little thing, but it will make the difference. I've just noticed there's nail detail around the back edge. I hadn't noticed that before. When you get close up to it, that's when you start noticing things. If we just go over it with a little bit of glue, that'll tidy up all the little plastic debris and stuff, and it'll also just double check that we've got this deep enough to show. So in this instance, no, we haven't. There we go. We have now. So, doesn't look like much, but when we get the paint on, you'll see that plank come round and it'll look so much more authentic than having a hard shiny edge, which isn't right at all. So I'm going to carry on putting the plank edges in and then put some more glue into this section, and then I think we'll probably be looking at the transom next after that. Right, this transom, first job obviously is to clean up all the sides so that we don't have any fit issues. It's all lumpy and bumpy, and we did have sprue gates on each side here, so we need to take that back. Now this is quite an interesting fit because this bit fits on the inside of the hull so that it's flush, and then the moulding here is on the outside of the hull parts. So we've got a little bit of a challenge here, I think. Right. So let's get in and scrape the seam away so that we've got nothing getting in the way. We want to make sure that we're removing seam but not detail, especially around those mouldings. There's a little bit of flash there we can sort. Thing about scraping is it gives you precision that you don't have with sanding. So you can do small localized areas that you can't do with a whopping great sanding stick. Just check there's nothing getting in the way of this, because we're going to have to put our rudder through there, I'm guessing. you can see how you developed as a youngster fine motor skills. Some lovely detail on here though. It's going to look great under paint. Yeah, really nice. Especially the lion's head there. Okay, so that is cleaned up. I'm just going to just go around, make sure there's nothing fluffy from all that scraping. That'll just tighten up that shape there for us. And doesn't like that look gorgeous? We've got little windows with wire mesh and really nice. Right, let's see if we can get this to fit. So this is attempt 1 and I'm just focused on the transom first. Well, see, look at the fit of that. That's all right, isn't it? We've got nothing that's going to locate it, so there's no like little lip or anything on the inside to stop it going too far back. So we have to be mindful of that. So we get it in. I think we glue that in as step 1, and then step 2 we pinch that together. And then we might have to, yeah, it's not going to, yeah, we're going to have a little lip there, do you see? It's okay on this side, but not on the other, so we'll be displaying it that side. No, we'll have a look at what we can do to, we've got all this nice detail here we don't want to lose, so we might build up that side just to level it off a little bit. So get that nice and flush. What happens when you get the moulding to sit correctly at the top, it pushes that in a little bit. So we've got to do that as a second step and manipulate the plastic a little. So I want it flush at the bottom. There we go. That'll hold now, like that. So let's get some glue in there. There you know, and it fits where it touches. And then we'll deal with gap filling and what have you thereafter. So we're pretty much glued from that line down there. We'll give that a moment. Let that all bond. So while that's drying, I can clean up some of these other parts ready for fitting. So we have a little opening here which we need to fill. Not a very authentic looking solution, but and why it's there I don't know. Obviously that's our mast opening. Then we've got a companionway which looks like something off the Titanic more than an Elizabethan ship, but there you go. We can glue that in now. Okay, next thing we need to do is add the anchor ropes. Now, there's a bit of faffing around when it comes to the instructions. Let me show you. So these are our instructions, and there's a little note that says the lengths and diameters of the threads are given in the table on page 4. So Here I can see an image of a rope, and it tells me that it's the 0.5. So that is the diameter. But it doesn't tell us the length. So we then go to page 4, and we've got this table. So what you've then got to do is go and do a GCSE in maths to work it out. Well, not quite. What you then have to do, which they don't tell you, is or maybe they do, but not sure. So the lengths are given in centimetres, apparently. So you go to page 6, and you've got more lengths. So here, for example, we've got C1, which is these little ropes underneath the shrouds, which we're putting in step 1, wherever that is. There we go. So we're putting those in step 1. We know they're 0.2. We know that they're referred to on page 6 as C1, and then we go back to page 4 and we find C1, and it says 140. And up here on the table of ropes, the various linen threads can be found in specialised model shops. Oh, so it was never supposed to be supplied. Okay. Lengths of threads are given in centimetres. The thread length in this table are given with an allowance of approximately 10 centimetres beyond the length necessary. To give the rigging shrouds a more realistic colour, soak them in very strong tea, or for 24 hours. Well, I'm not needed to do that. So C1, it's telling me, is 140 centimetres long. And yet actually, all you're doing with it, when you look at 6, is it's going through the hole, forming a loop, which you then tie the shroud line off in, and then going back through to pull tight. So you don't need 140 centimetres to do that. You might need 140 millimetres, you know, tops. So I think it's a lot of faffing around and it's wrong, so I'm just going to cut a length and do what I think's right. Yeah, but anchor ropes we need to add now before we install this piece in. Obviously it shows you with it knotted in, but we're going to do it slightly differently, so let's look at that. So we've got to get the thread to go through this hole and this hole. Now that's a big hawse hole, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of the sprue. So we've got a bit of sprue here. Let's cut that in half, so we've got one for each side, and we're going to tie the rope around the sprue, pass the sprue through that hole, and then we can pull it tight and put some glue in and glue it to the side, and that should anchor it all in place. So let's have a look at that. Right then, let's start with the easy upper thread in the first instance. So what we're going to do is we're basically just going to do a little double knot. Hate it when that happens. I was just in the process of getting them to the right place and it tightened up on me. Definitely blaming the thread for that. Right, so just carefully get that knot to overlap each other. So we've got a nice big knot we can't pull through. And using a good quality needle threader, plop that through. Cheap nasty thread this. I'm just using it up on this kit. There we go, we can pull that through. So that's job done on that first thread. And then No, it's not. It's gone and locked itself somewhere it shouldn't. There we go. So you can then, just using your poly cement, just glue that in. That will bond up the knot and hold it in place against the plastic. It's not the perfect adhesive for it, but it surprisingly works. So that's our first thread on. You can see I've done the other side already. Right, we're going to do it slightly differently for this other one. So I'm just going to cut a length of thread, and let's get that out of the way. So we can once again put our needle threader through and get our thread through the hole. Like so. Get it about halfway, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a little knot in one end. Put this bit of sprue through, tie it up, then do a second knot. Tie it up. Let's give that a trim. Then I'm going to get this. So we know that this bit of the thread is the thread that's going to go through the hole. Oh, it's come out. Let me just thread it back through.